Clark from Region 10. I'm happy to present this video in our series for successful curriculum implementation. And in this video, we will tackle the question, what's a thematic unit and how is it different? Okay, so let me share some contact information really quickly. If you have any questions, just let me know. And let's look a little closer at two questions you will be able to answer very well after this short video. The first question is, what is a thematic unit and how is it different from a traditional unit? And the second question is, how do I teach a thematic unit effectively or not effectively? What are some pitfalls that we need to avoid? Okay? All right, let's dive into this first question. What is a thematic unit? If we look at a thematic unit, we'll see that it is organized around AP themes. That's the theme of the thematic unit, right? And these themes really dive in deep to issues in the humanities. Themes would be beauty and aesthetics, families and communities, personal and public identities. Okay, you may have heard of some of these before. Essential questions drive the instruction around these themes because instead of just learning words and, only the language, we really want students learning more and developing an understanding about what it means to be a human on this planet. And what better way to do that than through language study? You'll also notice here that the evidence and assessment that is collected during a thematic unit is all based on the three modes of communication, which are aligned to the TEKS. And we're going to see that students will be doing performance assessments instead of a traditional multiple choice test, okay? Or fill in the blank test. We won't do that anymore. Kids will be communicating in the interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational modes. Okay, now let's contrast this with a traditional unit. Typically, some people also call these legacy units, but in a traditional unit, you'll see probably a chapter topic. So here we have like in the market, and you'll see a list of things that kids are gonna learn, right? Like they're gonna learn these words, they're gonna learn this vocabulary, and then at the end of the unit, I'm going to assess whether they know that vocabulary and whether they know that grammar, okay? So if we contrast these two, they're pretty different. Yes, they both teach vocabulary and grammar because you can't do interpersonal communication or interpretive or presentational if you don't have vocabulary and grammar. But in the traditional unit, all we're teaching is kind of like a list of things. And if we look back here at our thematic unit, all of those things are going to be taught in there, but we're going above and beyond, and we're teaching the kids to communicate, right? So if you look at the traditional unit, there is no mention of communication here. There is no mention of what the kids will be able to do, ask and answer questions, identify keywords, infer, describe. There's no mention of that here, okay? So that's how they're very different. And we can see that in a thematic unit, clearly, it is focused on the student outputs, what they can do with the language. And in that traditional or legacy unit, it's very focused on the inputs. And when I say input, I'm not talking about target language input here. I'm talking about things teachers have to teach, not things students will do to communicate, okay? So that's how they are fundamentally different. And having that realization is actually the first step to teach a thematic unit effectively. Okay, so let's look at a fatal flaw that might happen first, though. When I hear teachers, they get their thematic unit, they look at it, they say, okay, I got it. And then they go back to their planning calendar and they try to teach interpersonal communication like as if it were a traditional unit, okay? So the teacher would first teach the vocabulary, then they would teach the grammar, and then give the kids like a multiple choice test and like fill in the blanks in the conversation, okay? That's not going to allow our students to show what they really can do with the language. Now, I want to pull up here an example traditional monthly planning calendar. Okay, so in the traditional way, a teacher might say, okay, I need to teach the verb ser, and I need to teach interest vocabulary, and I need to teach the verb I like. Okay, so I'm going to paste those things on my calendar, give the kids an oral interview to see if they can answer my questions, and then ask them to prepare a presentation about who they are, stand up in front of the class and present it. And then at the end, I'm going to give them a multiple choice test, and those are my 3 major grades. Okay, now that's the traditional way. Let's contrast this now with a thematic unit planning calendar. Okay, on the thematic unit planning calendar, instead of putting a vocabulary or a grammar topic on your calendar, you're going to put the TEKS, because those are the outputs the students need to perform. So we're going to start the unit with interpretive reading and helping kids learn how to identify keywords and details. Tuesday, okay, we're going to do interpersonal communication, and kids are going to ask and respond to questions about who you are. I'm going to teach them how to do that. Okay, Wednesday, we're going to switch back to interpretive. I'm going to keep working on identifying some keywords and details, but now maybe we're going to do listening instead of reading. And then Thursday, back to interpersonal, and maybe end the week with presentational. So you see, this approach to planning is very different if we look between the two. Here, in the traditional way, I'm just kind of putting the thing, the what, okay? But here, I'm putting the communication on here. This is what the kids are learning to communicate, all right? You'll notice there I've left a couple of lines blank on this example. That's just so that to increase the legibility. Obviously, you would plan for all of the modes throughout the weeks in the planning calendar. Also realize there's only 4 weeks on this calendar. Almost nobody has a 4-week unit, okay? But this is just for the purpose of demonstration, okay? And so it's easy to read here, okay? So what have we learned? Okay, and I hear teachers say, oh, but I tried this curriculum, thematic unit stuff, and it doesn't work. Okay, well, a lot of the failure in that is trying to plan the thematic unit as if it were a traditional unit. And that's the first pitfall to avoid. So instead of seeing your unit as what do I have to cover, I want you to see your unit as what do the kids need to be able to communicate, right? And that's your TEKS. So you have to teach kids how to do the communication in the TEKS. All right, so what did we learn today? First of all, the purpose of a thematic unit is to get students to the level of communication in the 3 modes, and so that they are learning about themselves and also the world in which they live. Okay? The purpose of a traditional unit is to cover certain words, to teach kids words and structures like grammar structures. That's the purpose of a traditional unit. It's not to learn about the world. It's not to communicate. It's really just to learn this stuff and then take a test on it. Okay. How do I teach a thematic unit effectively? Well, the first thing is you got to go to that monthly planning calendar, and you've got to put your TEKS on that planning calendar instead of the snippets of language that you are going to teach, okay? I'm going to be effective in teaching my unit if I put students are going to learn to ask and answer questions about who they are versus if I put on the planning calendar the verb to be, okay? All right, so that's a first crucial kind of shift in perspective that needs to happen, and also shift in skill, because the pacing on the planning calendar is super important. Okay, let's just do a quick recap here and name that success criteria. Okay, in order to successfully implement a thematic unit, you've got to know the TEKS inside and out. Okay, you really got to know them, and you've got to be able to identify from the unit document the communicative outputs the kids will demonstrate. For example, interpersonal, ask and answer questions about who they are and what they like in an oral conversation. Okay, got to be able to identify that. And then we've got to be able to pace the learning so kids can do that by the end of the unit on the planning calendar, right? We're going to plan with our teaks on the calendar, not topics on the calendar, okay? As always, Region 10 is here to help. So keep learning with us. Our bit link is there on the screen. I'm going to spell it out. bit.ly/capital R10, capital W, capital L. And just you can find trainings, online trainings. You can request trainings there. So just let us know if you need help. And here's my contact information. Thank you guys so much. I hope this video was helpful, and we will see you next time.